When a billionaire single father stands up to protect a waitress from public humiliation, he has no idea the viral video will destroy his reputation by morning. Victor Langley, powerful, ruthless, and untouchable, launches a campaign to crush Adrian Vale's life, not knowing the quiet man he attacked controls more power than Victor can imagine. But this isn't just about money or influence. It's about a shy waitress with dangerous secrets, a little girl watching her father choose courage over safety, and one recorded moment that will burn everything to the ground. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights inside Maple Street Diner buzzed like dying insects, casting everything in that peculiar yellow glow that made even fresh coffee look stale. Adrian Vale sat in the corner booth, the red vinyl cracked beneath him, watching his 6-year-old daughter Mia color outside the lines of her restaurant placemat. Her tongue stuck out slightly in concentration, a habit she'd picked up from him during late nights when he worked from home. "Daddy, does the dinosaur have to be green?" Mia asked, holding up a purple crayon like it was contraband. "Dinosaurs can be whatever color you want," Adrian said, his voice carrying that particular exhaustion of single parents everywhere. "Maybe this one ate too many grapes." Mia giggled, a sound that made the last 18 hours of conference calls and crisis management almost worthwhile. Almost. Adrian looked like a man who'd given up on impressing anyone. His flannel shirt had a small stain near the collar, probably jelly, from this morning's rushed breakfast. His jeans were the kind you bought at department stores, not boutiques. The watch on his wrist was a $15 Casio he'd grabbed at a drugstore after Mia broke his previous one playing superhero. Nothing about him screamed wealth. Everything about him screamed exhausted father trying to keep it together, which was exactly how he preferred it. The diner itself was the kind of place that existed in every small town and big city alike. A refuge for night shift workers, elderly couples who'd been coming for 40 years, and parents like Adrian who just needed their kid to eat something that wasn't shaped like a cartoon character. The wallpaper was outdated by at least 2 decades, showing faded illustrations of the town's history. The booths had seen better years. The floor tile had that permanent dinginess that no amount of mopping could fix. But the coffee was hot. The food was decent, and the waitress was kind. Nora Hayes moved through the diner with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been doing this work long enough to anticipate orders before they were spoken. She was 30, though the exhaustion in her eyes sometimes made her look older. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her uniform, a light blue dress with a white apron, had been washed so many times the color had faded to something almost gray in places. She'd brought Mia extra crayons without being asked. She'd refilled Adrian's coffee 3 times without interrupting his daughter's story about school. She moved quietly, efficiently, like someone who'd learned a long time ago that the best way to survive was to be helpful without being noticed. Adrian had seen her type before. Hell, he'd been her type once, back when he was washing dishes in a kitchen in South Boston, trying to figure out how to turn a high school education and a head for numbers into something more than minimum wage. "Miss Nora?" Mia called out as the waitress passed their table. Nora paused, a coffee pot in one hand, dirty plates balanced on her other arm. "Yes, sweetheart? Do you like purple dinosaurs?" A genuine smile crossed Nora's face, the first time Adrian had seen one that reached her eyes since they'd arrived. "I think purple dinosaurs are the best kind." "See, Daddy?" Mia turned to Adrian with the triumphant expression of a 6-year-old who'd just won an argument. "I stand corrected," Adrian said, raising his coffee cup in surrender. Nora's smile lingered for just a moment before she continued toward the kitchen, disappearing through the swinging door. Adrian watched her go, not with attraction exactly, but with recognition. He knew what it looked like when someone was just trying to make it through the day. The door chimed. Adrian didn't look up immediately. People came and went. The diner's dinner rush, such as it was, had mostly cleared out, leaving just a handful of stragglers. The clock above the counter read 7:47 p.m. Mia's bedtime was in an hour, which meant he had exactly that long to finish this meal, drive home, negotiate the bath and teeth routine, read 2 books instead of the agreed-upon one, and maybe, answer a few emails before he collapsed. "This place is still standing?" A man's voice cut through the ambient noise, loud enough that several people looked up. "I'm shocked they haven't condemned it." Adrian's eyes shifted. 3 men had entered, all wearing suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The one in front was tall, probably mid-40s, with the kind of silver-touched hair that looked distinguished in board meetings. His tie was loosened just enough to suggest he was off-duty from whatever corporate position he held, but the authority hadn't left his posture. Victor Langley. Adrian recognized him immediately, though they'd never met directly. Langley was the CEO of Meridian Holdings, a mid-sized investment firm that had been making aggressive moves in the regional market. The kind of man who appeared in business journals talking about disruption and market efficiency while quietly crushing smaller competitors. The kind of man Adrian had dealt with 100 times in conference rooms and shareholder meetings. The kind who mistook cruelty for strategy. "Victor, come on," one of his companions said, a younger man with nervous energy. "Let's just grab coffee and go." "Relax, Bradley." Victor surveyed the diner like a general studying a battlefield. "I'm simply observing. This is what happens when businesses refuse to evolve. They become museums, sad little time capsules." A few customers shifted uncomfortably. The elderly couple in the corner booth, probably in their 70s, stared down at their meatloaf. Nora emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 plates. She saw the new arrivals and something changed in her posture. Not fear exactly, but a kind of careful neutrality. The smile she'd shown Mia vanished completely. "Gentlemen," she said quietly, gesturing to an empty booth. "Anywhere you'd like." "Oh, I remember you." Victor's attention locked onto Nora like a predator recognizing prey. "You're still working here? I would have thought you'd found something better by now. Then again, some people are perfectly suited for certain levels of work." The contempt in his voice was casual, conversational, which somehow made it worse. Nora's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? Black? And try not to spill it this time." Victor moved toward a booth, his companions trailing behind like remora fish following a shark. Adrian felt Mia's small hand touch his arm. "Daddy, that man's mean." "Yeah, baby, he is." "Why is he mean to Miss Nora?" It was the kind of question 6-year-olds asked that didn't have simple answers. Why were some people cruel? Why did power make certain men feel entitled to diminish others? How do you explain to a child that the world sometimes rewards the worst behavior? "Some people forget how to be kind," Adrian said finally. It wasn't a complete answer, but it was true enough. Nora moved through her routine, pouring coffee, taking orders. Victor's companions ordered burgers. Victor himself ordered nothing but coffee, which told Adrian everything he needed to know. The man wasn't here to eat. He was here to hold court, to be seen, to remind everyone in this modest diner that he was above it all. "This coffee tastes like diesel fuel," Victor announced loudly, pushing the cup away after one sip. "I can brew a fresh pot," Nora offered, her voice professionally neutral. "Don't bother. I doubt fresh would improve it." Victor leaned back in his booth, arms spread across the back of the seat. "Tell me something. How long have you worked here?" 4 years. 4 years? Victor repeated it like he was savoring a particularly ironic joke. "And what are your ambitions? Dream of becoming shift manager someday? Maybe assistant manager if you're really driven." One of his companions, Bradley, looked uncomfortable. The third man, older, with the weathered face of someone who'd learned not to question his boss, just sipped his water. "I'm content with my work," Nora said, her hands gripping the order pad a little too tightly. "Content? That's a polite word for giving up." Victor smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "You know what your problem is? People like you lack vision. You accept your circumstances instead of rising above them. It's almost Darwinian." Adrian felt his jaw clench. Mia was watching everything, her crayons forgotten. "Your burger will be out in a few minutes," Nora said, turning to leave. "We're not done talking. I have other customers. They can wait." Victor's voice sharpened. "When someone of my position is speaking to you, the appropriate response is to listen." The diner had gone quiet. The elderly couple wasn't even pretending to eat anymore. A trucker at the counter had turned on his stool. Everyone could feel it, the way the temperature in a room changes right before something breaks. Nora stood very still. "I apologize if I was rude. I'll check on your order." She started to move. Victor reached out and grabbed her wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, probably, but firm enough that she couldn't pull away without making a scene. Firm enough that everyone could see the power dynamic playing out in real time. "Look at me when I'm speaking to you," Victor said quietly. That was when Adrian stood up. He didn't rush, didn't shout. He simply rose from his seat, his 6'1" frame unfolding with deliberate calm, and walked toward Victor's booth. "Daddy?" Mia's voice was small, worried. "Stay there, baby. I'll be right back." Bradley noticed him first. Victor?" "Let her go." Adrian's voice was level, conversational almost, but it carried through the silent diner. Victor looked up, his hand still on Nora's wrist. His expression was one of amused surprise, like a cat that had just been challenged by a mouse. "Excuse me? I said let her go." Adrian stopped 3 feet from the booth, close enough to matter, far enough to avoid seeming aggressive. "She asked to leave. You're holding her. Let go." Victor released Nora's wrist but didn't break eye contact with Adrian. "This is a private conversation." "No, it's harassment. There's a difference." "Harassment?" Victor laughed, looking at his companions for support. Bradley was studying the table. The older man just watched, expressionless. "Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" "Don't know. Don't care." Adrian's hand stayed relaxed at his sides. Every instinct from years of high-stakes negotiations told him to control his breathing, his posture, his tone. Never let them see you angry. Anger was weakness. Calm was power. "You're done speaking to her that way. Or what?" Victor stood up, buttoning his suit jacket in a reflexive gesture of dominance. He was used to boardrooms where standing up meant something, where physical presence translated to authority. "You'll do what, exactly? You're going to defend the honor of a waitress you don't even know? I'm going to ask you one more time to leave her alone. After that, we'll see." Nora had backed away slightly, her hand unconsciously rubbing the wrist Victor had grabbed. "It's fine," she said quietly. "Really, I don't want any trouble." "It's not fine," Adrian said without looking at her. His eyes stayed locked on Victor. "And you don't have to accept being treated like that. Nobody does." Victor smiled, and it was the smile of a man who'd just found something entertaining. "You know what I think? I think you're one of those heroes, the kind who rides in on a white horse thinking they're saving the day. Let me explain something about the real world, friend. People like her," he gestured dismissively toward Nora, "they're service industry. They exist to serve people like me. That's the natural order. And people like you—" He looked Adrian up and down, taking in the flannel shirt, the jeans, the drugstore watch. "You're just playing dress-up. Probably work some dead-end job, thinking you're making a difference. You're not. You're as irrelevant as she is." The trucker at the counter stood up. So did one of the cooks visible through the kitchen window. The elderly man in the corner booth had his phone out. Adrian felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger. Anger would have been easier. This was the calculation that came from years of watching men like Victor operate. The knowledge that people like this didn't learn from conversations. They learned from consequences. "You should leave," Adrian said simply. "Should I?" Victor stepped closer, invading Adrian's space with the confidence of someone who'd never been checked. "You going to make me? Going to throw a punch in front of your daughter? That pretty little girl over there watching her daddy play hero?" Adrian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. A line had been crossed. "Don't," he said very quietly. "Talk about my daughter." Or what? What happened next occurred in about 3 seconds, but would be replayed thousands of times across social media within 24 hours. Victor, emboldened by Adrian's stillness, reached out and shoved Adrian's shoulder. Not hard, just enough to establish dominance, the way bullies do when they think they've already won. Adrian didn't move. Victor shoved again, harder this time. Still nothing. "That's what I thought," Victor said, turning back toward his booth. "I'll talk. No, he made a mistake then." As he turned, he swept his arm out in a dismissive gesture, and his hand connected with the tray Nora was carrying, the one with his companion's burgers and fries. The tray flew. Food scattered across the floor in a spectacular mess of ketchup, pickles, and broken dishes. "Jesus Christ!" Victor jumped back, looking down at his expensive shoes. "You clumsy—" He grabbed Nora's arm again, rougher this time, and actually shoved her. She stumbled backward, catching herself on an empty table. That was when Adrian moved. Not with rage, not with the wild swings of someone out of control. He stepped forward, positioned himself between Victor and Nora, and said in a voice that somehow carried more weight than any shout, "Touch her again, and it'll be the last thing you do today." The entire diner held its breath. Victor's face went red. "You're threatening me. Do you have any idea?" "I know exactly who you are. Victor Langley, CEO of Meridian Holdings. You've been acquiring properties across 3 states, leveraging debt to inflate your portfolio, and from what I hear, you're about 6 months from a liquidity crisis because your expansion model is unsustainable." Adrian spoke calmly, almost conversationally. "You're not as powerful as you think you are. You're definitely not powerful enough to treat people like this." For the first time, uncertainty crossed Victor's face. "How do you—" "Doesn't matter. What matters is you're leaving. Now." "I'm not going anywhere until I'm ready." Adrian pulled out his phone. "Then I'm calling the police. We can explain to them why you physically grabbed and shoved an employee. I'm sure that'll be a great look for Meridian Holdings. I bet your board of directors will love the publicity." "You're bluffing. Try me." The standoff lasted maybe 10 seconds, but it felt longer. Victor's companions were already sliding out of the booth, clearly wanting to leave. The older man put a hand on Victor's shoulder. "Victor, come on. It's not worth it." "Not worth it?" Victor's voice rose. "This nobody thinks he can—" "We're leaving." The older man's voice was firm. "Now." Victor looked around the diner, finally noticing that every person there was staring at him. The elderly couple, the trucker, the cook. Half of them had phones out. The elderly man wasn't just holding his phone. He was clearly recording. "This isn't over," Victor said, pointing at Adrian. "You have no idea what you just started." "Yeah, I do. I stopped you from assaulting someone." "That's exactly what I started." Victor's face twisted with fury, but he turned toward the door. His companions followed quickly. Just before leaving, he turned back one more time. "I'll destroy you for this. I'll find out who you are, where you work, and I'll make sure you regret every second of this little performance." "You do that," Adrian said. "I'll be easy to find." The door chimed as they left. For a moment, nobody in the diner moved. Then the trucker started clapping. The elderly woman joined in. Within seconds, scattered applause filled the space, though it felt strange and awkward, like nobody was quite sure what they'd just witnessed. Adrian turned to Nora. "You okay?" She was staring at him like he'd just landed from another planet. "Why did you do that?" "Because he was wrong." "You don't even know me." "Didn't need to. He was wrong." Nora's eyes were bright with something between gratitude and terror. "He meant what he said. He'll come after you." "Let him." "You don't understand. Victor Langley doesn't make empty threats. He has lawyers, connections, money. So do I." Adrian said it quietly, without boasting. Just a statement of fact. Before Nora could respond, Mia appeared at Adrian's side, wrapping her small arms around his leg. "Are you okay, Daddy?" Adrian picked her up, settling her on his hip. She was getting too big for this, but tonight he needed to hold her. "I'm fine, baby. That man was really mean." "Yeah, he was. You made him leave." "I asked him to leave. He made the choice." Mia thought about this with the seriousness only 6-year-olds can muster. "Good. I didn't like him." The manager emerged from the back office, a woman in her 50s named Dorothy, who'd been running Maple Street Diner for the last decade. She surveyed the mess on the floor, looked at Nora's shaken expression, and sighed. "Everybody okay?" "We're fine, Dorothy," Nora said quickly. "I'll clean this up." "No, you won't. Take 5 minutes. Sit down." Dorothy looked at Adrian. "Your meal's on the house tonight." "That's not necessary." "It is to me. I've been wanting to throw Victor Langley out of here for 3 years. You did what I legally couldn't." She paused. "Though I'm guessing tomorrow's going to be interesting." "Probably," Adrian admitted. He carried Mia back to their booth. Nora disappeared into the kitchen. The other customers slowly returned to their meals, though the atmosphere had changed. People kept glancing at Adrian, some with approval, others with the kind of nervous energy that comes from witnessing confrontation. The elderly man who'd been recording approached Adrian's table. He was tall, thin, with a veteran's cap and hands that shook slightly with age. "Son, I got the whole thing on video. You want me to delete it? I will. But I'm thinking that footage might protect you if that bastard tries anything." Adrian considered this. His instinct was to say yes, delete it. The last thing he needed was attention. But the old man had a point. Keep it, Adrian said. If things get complicated, I might need proof of what actually happened. You got it. The old man extended his hand. Name's Frank. Army, retired. I've seen bullies all my life. You did good. They shook hands. Frank returned to his wife, and Adrian could see them talking in low, animated voices. Mia was quiet, picking at her French fries without much enthusiasm. You scared? Adrian asked her. A little. That's okay. I was a little scared too. Really? Really. But sometimes being scared and doing the right thing happen at the same time. Is Miss Nora going to be okay? Adrian looked toward the kitchen, where he could see Nora's silhouette through the window. She was standing very still, her back to the dining room. I hope so, baby. I really hope so. They finished their meal in relative quiet. Nora didn't come back out to their table. Another waitress brought their check, a young woman with pink highlights who looked at Adrian like he'd done something either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. When Adrian left cash on the table, including a tip that was probably triple the bill, he took Mia's hand and headed for the door. Nora caught him just before he left. Wait. She'd cleaned up, washed her face. Her eyes were red but dry. I wanted to say thank you. I know that sounds inadequate, but you don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. What you did standing up to him like that, you didn't have to. Most people wouldn't have. Adrian shifted Mia to his other side. Most people should. He really will come after you. Victor doesn't forget things like this. He holds grudges like they're investments. I can handle it. Can you? Nora's voice dropped. Because I've seen what he does to people who cross him. I've seen careers destroyed, businesses ruined. He has lawyers on retainer whose entire job is making problems disappear. And you just became a problem. Then I'll deal with it when it comes. Who are you? The question came out frustrated, almost desperate. You're not just some random guy having dinner with his daughter. The things you said about his business, the way you stood there like nothing he could do would touch you. Who are you? Adrian could have told her, could have explained that he had more power in his phone contacts than Victor Langley would accumulate in a lifetime. That Meridian Holdings was small enough that Adrian could buy it outright without his accountant blinking. That the flannel shirt and drugstore watch were choices, not circumstances. But he didn't. I'm just a father trying to teach his daughter that you stand up when someone's being hurt. That's all. Nora studied his face for a long moment, searching for something. I don't believe you, but thank you anyway. Take care of yourself, Adrian said, and meant it. Outside, the parking lot was mostly empty. Adrian's car was a 5-year-old Honda Accord, deliberately unremarkable. He buckled Mia into her car seat and sat in the driver's seat for a moment, hands on the wheel. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Chen, his head of security. MC, video from Maple Street Diner is already online. You should see it before morning. Adrian closed his eyes. Of course it was online. Nothing stayed private anymore. A V. How bad? MC. Depends. You look either like a hero or a lunatic. Victor Langley is already spinning it. A V. Let him spin. MC. Adrian, this could get messy. AV. Then it gets messy. I'm not apologizing for doing the right thing. MC. Didn't ask you to. Just giving you the heads up. This might cost you. AV. Some things cost more if you don't do them. He put the phone away and started the car. In the rearview mirror, he could see Mia already drowsy, her head tilted against the car seat. Daddy? Yeah, baby? Are we heroes now? Adrian smiled despite everything. No, sweetheart. We're just people who didn't stay seated when we should have stood up. That's all anyone needs to be. As he pulled out of the parking lot, he didn't look back at the diner, didn't see Nora standing in the window, watching his taillights disappear into the night. Didn't see her pull out her own phone and open the file she'd been building for 2 years, evidence of every time Victor Langley had harassed her, threatened her, used his position to make her life hell. He didn't see her hands shake as she looked at the footage already circulating online. And he definitely didn't see the email that Victor Langley was composing at that exact moment, reaching out to every business contact he had, every media connection, every lawyer who owed him a favor. The video had already been viewed 4,000 times. By morning, it would be 4 million. And by morning, Adrian Vale's quiet life would be over. But that night, driving home with his daughter half asleep in the back seat, Adrian felt something he hadn't felt in years since his wife died and left him to raise Mia alone. He felt like maybe, despite everything, he'd gotten something right, even if it cost him everything. The video hit 6 million views by the time Adrian's alarm went off at 5:47 a.m. He'd slept maybe 3 hours, the kind of fractured sleep where you're never quite under but never fully awake either. His phone had been buzzing since midnight, texts, calls, notifications from apps he'd forgotten he had. He'd silenced it around 2, but the damage was already spreading like ink in water. Adrian stood in his kitchen, still in the t-shirt and sweatpants he'd slept in, watching coffee drip into the pot with the intensity of someone trying to divine the future from caffeine. Through the window above the sink, dawn was just starting to break over the neighborhood. Modest houses, decent lawns, the kind of suburb where people knew your name but not your business. Or at least, they hadn't until now. His phone sat on the counter, face down. He could feel it there like a physical presence, radioactive with attention he'd spent years avoiding. Marcus had called 4 times. His lawyer had called twice. There were 37 text messages, most from numbers he didn't recognize. And his email inbox had exploded overnight. Reporters, bloggers, people claiming to be from news networks he'd never heard of. The coffee finished brewing. Adrian poured a cup, black, and finally flipped his phone over. The video was everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Platforms he barely used were now hosting 1,000 variations of the same 43 seconds. Someone had edited it with dramatic music. Someone else had added subtitles in 6 languages. There were reaction videos, commentary videos, videos of people watching the video. The titles varied: Man Stands Up to Bully, Father Protects Waitress, Billionaire CEO Gets What He Deserves. Adrian froze on that last one. He clicked through. It was from a smaller channel, maybe 20,000 subscribers, but the thumbnail showed Victor Langley's face with big red letters. Exposed. His stomach dropped. The video opened with the diner footage, now weirdly high quality, like someone had enhanced it. Then it cut to the narrator, a young guy in his 20s wearing a hoodie, sitting in front of a ring light. So this went viral last night, and everyone's talking about the hero dad who stood up to this corporate bully. But here's what nobody's telling you. That bully is Victor Langley, CEO of Meridian Holdings, and he's got a history of this stuff. I'm talking lawsuits, harassment complaints, people who worked for him and left with ND, as thicker than phone books. The video showed screenshots of news articles, blurred documents, testimonies from former employees with their faces obscured. But here's the twist, the narrator continued. The guy who stood up to him? Total mystery. Nobody knows who he is. Just some dad having dinner with his kid who decided today was the day to play hero, and now Langley's people are going after him hard. Adrian set his phone down. This was happening faster than he'd anticipated. Upstairs, he heard Mia's bedroom door open, the soft pad of small feet on carpet. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, dragging her stuffed elephant by one worn ear. "Morning, Daddy." "Morning, baby." Adrian forced normalcy into his voice. "Cereal or waffles?" "Waffles. The ones with the blueberries." "You got it." He moved through the routine on autopilot, frozen waffles in the toaster, orange juice in her special cup with the bendy straw, cutting everything into manageable pieces. Mia climbed onto her chair at the kitchen table and immediately started talking about something that happened in her dream involving a talking dog and a spaceship. Adrian let her words wash over him, grateful for the distraction. His phone buzzed. Another call from Marcus. "I have to take this," Adrian said. "Stay at the table, okay?" "Okay." He stepped into the hallway, closing the kitchen door most of the way. "Marcus, have you seen it?" His head of security didn't bother with pleasantries. "Some of it. It's worse than I thought. Langley's PR team is working overtime. They've already released a statement calling you an unstable individual who became violent in a public space. They're framing you as dangerous." "I didn't touch him." "Doesn't matter. They've got lawyers claiming you made verbal threats, that you intimidated their client, that you created a hostile environment. They're talking about pressing charges for assault." Adrian laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Assault? He's the one who grabbed her." "I know, but he's got 3 witnesses who'll say otherwise, or at least muddy the water enough that it becomes he said, she said. And right now, he's got the bigger megaphone." "What else?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. He's reaching out to your business contacts. The coffee in Adrian's stomach turned acidic. What? Started last night. I've got confirmation he called at least 7 people in your network, telling them you're having a breakdown, that you're unstable and potentially dangerous to work with. He's being subtle about it, not making direct threats, just expressing concern and hoping someone intervenes before you hurt yourself or others. That son of a... Adrian, Marcus's voice was sharp. Don't say anything you don't want recorded. Your phone could be compromised. It's not. You sure about that? Adrian wasn't sure about anything anymore. He rubbed his eyes with his free hand. What's the damage? So far, 3 companies have put pending deals on hold pending review of the situation. 2 others called me directly asking what the hell's going on. Your lawyer's fielding calls from reporters asking if it's true you have a history of violent behavior. This is insane. I defended a waitress from being harassed. I know, but Langley's spinning it as a businessman being ambushed by an aggressive stranger. He's claiming you knew who he was, that this was targeted, that you might have been waiting for him. That's ridiculous. Doesn't matter. It's a narrative and it's spreading. Right now you're both the hero and the villain depending on which version people see first. Adrian walked to the living room window. Outside, a car he didn't recognize was parked across the street. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat. Marcus, there's a car outside my house. Journalists, probably. They've got your address. How? Same way everyone gets everything now. Public records, social media forensics, somebody who knew somebody. You're not exactly hiding anymore. Adrian felt the walls closing in. This was exactly what he'd spent years avoiding. Exposure, attention, people digging into his life. He'd built careful distance between his public persona as a billionaire investor and his private life as a single father in a modest suburb. That distance was evaporating by the hour. What do I do? Option 1, you go public. Full press conference, explain your side, use your actual resources and influence to bury Langley before he buries you. Option 2, you stay quiet, let me handle the business side, and hope this blows over. Option 3, there's no option 3. Option 3, Marcus continued, you disappear for a while, take Mia, go somewhere off-grid, let me clean this up behind the scenes. The thought was tempting. Just run. Take his daughter somewhere safe and wait for the storm to pass. But he'd tried running before, right after his wife died. Tried to hide from grief, from responsibility, from the reality of being a single parent who had to figure out things like how to braid hair and explain death to a 4-year-old. Running hadn't helped. It just delayed everything. I'm not running, Adrian said. Then you need to make a decision about going public. I need to think. Think fast. By noon, Langley's going to do a press conference. If you don't control this narrative, he will. They hung up. Adrian stood at the window watching the car across the street. The person inside was talking on their phone, occasionally glancing at his house. This was his life now, at least for the next few days. He went back to the kitchen. Mia had finished her waffles and was now trying to balance her juice cup on her head. Daddy, look. That's very impressive. Now please put the cup down before you spill it. She giggled and complied. Are we going to school today? The question hit him harder than it should have. School? Normal life? The routine of drop-off and pick-up and parent-teacher conferences? Could he still do that with a journalist parked outside? Yeah, baby, we're going to school. Okay. She hopped down from her chair. Can I wear my sparkle shoes? Sure. While Mia got dressed, Adrian made the mistake of checking his email again. Mixed in with the press requests and angry messages from people calling him everything from a hero to a violent psychopath was one that made him stop. The sender was listed as M. Hayes. The subject line, I'm sorry. He opened it. Mr. Vale, I don't know if this is the right email. I found your name through some research after last night, and I hope this reaches you. I'm writing to apologize. What happened at the diner is being twisted into something ugly, and it's my fault. If I had just kept quiet, if I hadn't let him get to me, none of this would be happening to you. I've seen the news reports this morning. They're calling you dangerous. They're saying terrible things about you, and it's because you stood up for me. That's not right. I want to help fix this. I have evidence, recordings, messages, documentation of everything Victor Langley has done over the past 2 years. Not just to me, to other people too. I've been collecting it because I thought maybe someday someone would listen. I can give all of it to you, to your lawyer, to whoever needs to see it. Please let me help. This is my mess. You shouldn't have to pay for doing the right thing. Nora Hayes. Adrian read it twice. She'd been collecting evidence for 2 years. That meant this wasn't just casual harassment. This was systematic, sustained, and she'd been documenting it the whole time. That changed things. He started to reply, then stopped. His lawyer would want to see this first. Any communication with Nora could be used against them if this turned into a legal battle. But sitting at his kitchen table, listening to Mia sing some made-up song about dinosaurs upstairs, Adrian felt something shift. Nora had been fighting this alone for 2 years. She'd endured whatever Victor Langley threw at her and still showed up to work, still smiled at customers, still brought extra crayons to little girls having dinner with their fathers. She was stronger than anyone gave her credit for. He typed a response. Nora, this isn't your fault. Don't apologize for someone else's cruelty. I appreciate the offer, but right now the best thing you can do is keep that evidence safe. If things escalate, we might need it, but don't put yourself at risk. Take care of yourself. Adrian. He hit send before he could second-guess it. The drive to Mia's school was tense. The journalist's car followed them for 3 blocks before giving up, probably realizing that an elementary school drop-off wasn't going to make compelling footage. Adrian walked Mia to her classroom, hyper-aware of other parents looking at him. A few smiled. Maybe they'd seen the video and approved. Others whispered to each other, shooting glances his way. One mother actually pulled her child closer as he passed. "Daddy, why is that lady looking at you funny?" Mia whispered. "She's probably just tired, baby." "She looks scared." Kids noticed everything. Adrian squeezed her hand. "Don't worry about it." Mia's teacher, Miss Rodriguez, met them at the classroom door. She was young, probably late 20s, with the kind of patient energy that suggested she'd chosen teaching because she actually liked children. "Good morning, Mia." Then quieter to Adrian. "Mr. Vale, could I speak with you for a moment?" Adrian's chest tightened. "Sure." She waited until Mia was inside, excitedly showing another kid her sparkle shoes before speaking. "I wanted to give you a heads up. The principal called an emergency staff meeting this morning. Someone sent her the video from last night." "Okay." "She's concerned about—" Ms. Rodriguez chose her words carefully. "The attention it might bring to the school. Parents are already asking questions." "I didn't do anything wrong. I know. I saw the video. You were protecting someone." She glanced back at the classroom. "But the school has policies about parents who might attract media attention or create security concerns. I'm not saying I agree. I'm just warning you that they might ask you to keep a low profile during pickup and drop-off." Adrian felt anger flare, hot and immediate. "You're saying I'm a security concern?" "I'm saying the school is scared of the situation, not of you. There's a difference." Miss Rodriguez lowered her voice further. "Between you and me? You did the right thing. But doing the right thing doesn't always protect you from the consequences." She went back into the classroom before he could respond. Adrian walked back to his car feeling like the world had tilted slightly off axis. He'd expected pushback from business contacts, maybe even legal threats, but his daughter's school treating him like a problem? That hadn't been on his radar. His phone rang as he started the engine. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him hit the green button. "Hello? Mr. Vale?" A woman's voice, professional and crisp. "My name is Jennifer Torres. I'm a reporter with Channel 7 News. I'd love to speak with you about last night's incident at—" Adrian hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. He turned it off completely. The rest of the morning was a blur of trying to maintain normalcy while everything crumbled. He went to the gym, his usual routine, but people kept staring. The guy at the front desk asked if he was that dude from the video. Someone tried to take his picture in the locker room. He left after 10 minutes. At home, he tried to work. His company, technically a holdings firm that managed various investments and acquisitions, was mostly run by a capable team that didn't need his day-to-day input. But there were always decisions to make, emails to answer, problems that only he could solve. Today, he couldn't focus on any of it. His lawyer called. They spoke for 20 minutes about potential responses, legal strategies, the possibility of a defamation suit against Victor Langley. Everything was maybes and possibilities and depends on how this plays out. At 11:47 a.m., Marcus texted, MC, Langley's press conference starts in 13 minutes. It's streaming live. Adrian didn't want to watch, but he needed to know what he was up against. He pulled up the live stream on his laptop. Victor Langley stood at a podium with the Meridian Holdings logo behind him. He wore a different suit than last night, this one navy blue with a red tie. His hair was perfectly styled. He looked like exactly what he was, a man comfortable with cameras and comfortable with lying. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, Victor began, his voice measured and calm. I want to address the incident that occurred last night at a local establishment, as I know many of you have seen the video circulating online. He paused, the way politicians do when they want to seem thoughtful. First, I want to be clear. I do not condone violence or intimidation of any kind. What happened last night was deeply troubling, and I'm grateful that no one was physically harmed. Adrian's jaw clenched. The reframing was already happening. I was having a private dinner with colleagues when an individual approached our table in an aggressive manner. Without provocation, this person began making threats, creating a hostile and frightening environment. When I attempted to leave the situation, he escalated further, making it clear through his words and body language that he intended to harm me if I didn't comply with his demands. Lies. Smooth, calculated lies. The video you've seen online has been edited and taken out of context. It doesn't show the initial confrontation, the verbal threats made before cameras were rolling, or the fear everyone in that restaurant felt watching this unfold. A reporter raised her hand. Mr. Langley, are you pressing charges? That's being discussed with my legal team. My primary concern right now is for my safety and the safety of my employees. This individual clearly has anger management issues, and I worry what might happen if he targets someone else. Another reporter. Do you know who he is? Victor's expression shifted to something that might have been concern if you didn't know better. I've been informed of his identity, yes, but I won't share that publicly. I'm not interested in revenge or retaliation. I just want to ensure this doesn't happen to anyone else. The performance was masterful. Victor positioned himself as the victim, Adrian as the aggressor, and the entire narrative flipped on its head. I do want to address one more thing, Victor continued. There are people online suggesting that I somehow mistreated the restaurant staff. That's categorically false. I have nothing but respect for service workers, and I would never behave in the manner I've been accused of. The waitress in question will confirm this if asked. We had a perfectly cordial interaction until the stranger inserted himself into a situation that didn't concern him. Adrian's hands were shaking. He closed the laptop before he could hear any more. His phone, turned back on now, immediately buzzed with texts. MC. He's good. I'll give him that. Lawyer. We need to respond, today, before this sets. Unknown. You should be ashamed of yourself. Unknown. I saw the real video. Don't let him win. Unknown. Kill yourself. Adrian stared at that last one for a long moment. Anonymous cruelty from someone who felt brave behind a screen. It should have rolled off him. Instead, it settled somewhere in his chest like a small stone. His phone rang. Nora Hayes. He answered. Hello? Mr. Vale, I just watched Langley's press conference. Her voice was shaking. He's lying. Everything he said is a lie. I know. I have to tell them. I have to go on record and say what actually happened. Nora, wait. I can't let him do this to you. He grabbed me. He shoved me. Everyone in that diner saw it. If you go public, he'll destroy you. Adrian tried to keep his voice steady. He'll claim you're lying to protect me. He'll dig into your life, find anything he can use and twist it until you're as discredited as I am. That's what people like him do. I don't care. You should. You have a life here, a job. Going against him publicly means losing all of that. So what? Nora's voice cracked. I just stay quiet while he ruins you for defending me? That's not right. Nothing about this is right. But you coming forward right now without proper legal protection, without a strategy, it'll just make things worse. Then what do we do? Adrian didn't have an answer. He stood in his kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, trying to figure out how to protect a woman he barely knew from a man who'd already shown exactly how far he was willing to go. Give me time to figure that out, he said finally. How much time? I don't know, but please, just wait. Don't do anything yet. Nora was quiet for a moment. He's going after the diner too. What? Dorothy called me this morning. Health inspectors showed up an hour ago, unannounced. They're going through everything: kitchen, storage, equipment. She's been running that place for a decade without a single violation, and suddenly they're there with clipboards looking for problems. He's using his connections. Yeah, and it's going to work. Dorothy can't afford to fight this. If they shut her down even temporarily, she'll lose everything. Adrian felt the weight of it pressing down. This wasn't just about him anymore. Victor was going scorched earth. Anyone associated with last night was now a target. I'll handle it, Adrian said. How? I'll figure it out. Just don't engage with anyone from the press. Don't respond to anything Langley's people send, and keep your evidence safe. After they hung up, Adrian sat at his kitchen table with his head in his hands. His phone buzzed again. A news alert. Local diner faces health violations after viral video incident. It was already starting. By the time Adrian had to pick up Mia from school, 3 more businesses connected to him had publicly distanced themselves. 2 released statements expressing concern about recent events. 1 terminated a consulting contract outright, citing a moral character clause that had probably never been enforced before. Victor Langley wasn't just attacking Adrian's reputation. He was systematically dismantling everything around him, creating financial pressure, social isolation, making it expensive to maintain his principles. At school pickup, 2 mothers Adrian had chatted with dozens of times before suddenly had urgent phone calls the moment he approached. Mia came out of class with a drawing she'd made. A picture of their family, just the 2 of them, and a purple dinosaur. Miss Rodriguez says I'm a good artist, Mia announced proudly. You are, baby. The best. They were almost to the car when someone called out. Mr. Vale? Adrian turned. A man in jeans and a windbreaker approached, holding a microphone. Behind him, another person had a camera on their shoulder. I'm sorry to bother you. No comment. Adrian opened Mia's car door. Just one question. Are you planning to respond to Victor Langley's allegations? I said no comment. Is it true you have a history of violence? Adrian stopped. The anger that had been building all day crystallized into something cold and focused. He looked directly at the camera. Victor Langley is a bully who's using his money and influence to rewrite what happened last night. He put his hands on a woman who asked him to leave her alone. I stopped him. That's the truth, whether he likes it or not. So you deny being aggressive? I deny being the problem. Now get away from my daughter. The journalist backed off, but Adrian could see him still talking into the microphone as they drove away. Daddy, who was that man? Nobody important. That night, after dinner and bath time and 2 stories instead of 1, Adrian sat in the living room with all the lights off except the lamp by his chair. His laptop was open to a dozen tabs. News articles, social media threads, legal advice forums. The video had been viewed 22 million times now. Half the comments called him a hero. The other half called him everything from unhinged to dangerous to worse things he wouldn't repeat even in his own head. Victor Langley had successfully split public opinion right down the middle. His phone buzzed. Marcus, texting a link. MC, you need to see this. Adrian clicked through. It was another video, this one from someone who'd been at the diner. Not the main incident, but the moments before, Victor loudly insulting the diner itself, making degrading comments about Nora before Adrian even stood up. The caption read, "Full context for what really happened. Share this." It had 14,000 views. Nothing compared to the main video's reach, but it was something. Adrian forwarded it to his lawyer. Then he opened a new document and started typing. Not a press release or a legal response. Just the truth, in his own words, about what he'd seen and why he'd stood up. He'd spent years avoiding the spotlight, protecting his privacy, keeping his wealth and his personal life separate. Maybe that had been the wrong approach all along. Maybe sometimes you had to step into the light, even when it burned. He wrote until midnight, then deleted everything and started over. The words wouldn't come right. Every sentence sounded either too defensive or too aggressive. Too much like a billionaire trying to win an argument, or too much like a guilty man making excuses. Finally, exhausted, he closed the laptop. Tomorrow he'd figure out the right response. Tomorrow he'd start fighting back properly. Tonight, he just needed to sleep. But sleep didn't come. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around him, Thinking about a shy waitress who'd been collecting evidence for 2 years, and a little girl who thought purple dinosaurs were the best kind, and a man who'd built an empire on cruelty getting away with it one more time. Some things, Adrian realized, cost more if you don't do them. But some things cost more than you can afford when you do. He just hoped he'd be able to pay whatever price was coming. Morning came with rain, the kind that turned the world gray and made everything feel heavier than it was. Adrian stood at his kitchen window, watching water streak down the glass, his second cup of coffee going cold in his hand. He hadn't slept. Every time he'd closed his eyes, his mind had replayed the press conference, Victor's smooth lies, the way public opinion was turning against him like a slow-motion avalanche. His phone sat on the counter, silent for the first time in 2 days. The press had moved on to the next outrage cycle. His business contacts had made their positions clear. Even the death threats had slowed to a trickle. The silence was almost worse than the noise. It meant people had already decided who he was. Mia appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, hair sticking up at odd angles. "No school today?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. Adrian checked the time. 6:43. He'd lost track completely. "Yeah, baby. School. Go get dressed." She shuffled off, and Adrian forced himself to move. Cereal, juice, the mechanical routine of getting a 6-year-old ready for a world that suddenly felt hostile. He was pulling Mia's coat from the closet when his phone finally rang. Not Marcus this time, not his lawyer. The caller ID showed a local number he didn't recognize. He almost let it go to voicemail, but something made him answer. "Hello? Mr. Vale?" A woman's voice, older, hesitant. "This is Dorothy Brennan, from Maple Street Diner." Adrian's chest tightened. "Is everything okay?" "That depends on your definition of okay." She laughed, but it sounded tired. "The health inspector found 7 violations yesterday." 7. "In a kitchen I've been running for 11 years without so much as a warning. Suddenly my refrigeration's inadequate, my ventilation doesn't meet code, and apparently I've got a grease trap that's been illegal since 2019. Funny how none of that mattered until 2 days ago. I'm sorry, this is because of me." "No, honey, this is because of Victor Langley, but I didn't call to make you feel worse." Dorothy paused. "I called because Nora came to see me last night. Brought me something you should probably know about." "What kind of something?" "The kind that explains why a 30-year-old woman's been working the night shift at a diner for 4 years when she's got a master's degree in psychology from State." Adrian went still. "What? You heard me right. Nora Hayes isn't what she looks like." "Well, she is. She's a waitress, that's real. But she's also a whole lot more." Dorothy's voice dropped. "She's been running an investigation, Mr. Vale, on Victor Langley, for 2 years. And if what she showed me is real, that man's done things that make grabbing her wrist look like nothing." The world tilted slightly. Adrian sat down hard in one of the kitchen chairs. "What kind of investigation?" "The kind you should hear from her directly. She wants to meet you, today, if possible. Says it can't wait anymore." Dorothy gave him an address. A coffee shop on the east side of town, nowhere near Maple Street. 2:00. "She'll be there." "Dorothy, I know what you're thinking. Why would a woman with a psychology degree spend 4 years serving coffee and taking abuse from men like Langley? Why put herself through that?" Dorothy's voice got quiet. "Because sometimes the only way to catch a predator is to let him think you're prey. Nora's been documenting everything, every interaction, every threat, every person he's hurt. She's been building a case that no lawyer could ignore, and now she thinks it's time to use it." They hung up. Adrian stared at his phone, trying to process what he'd just heard. Nora Hayes had a master's degree. She'd been running an investigation. Everything about the shy, nervous waitress who apologized too much and avoided eye contact, that was cover. She'd been watching, recording, collecting evidence while everyone around her assumed she was just another struggling service worker with limited options. She'd been hunting. The thought sent a chill through him that had nothing to do with the rain. "Daddy, I'm ready," Mia called from upstairs. Adrian pulled himself together. "Coming, baby." School drop-off was less dramatic today. A few stares, but no journalists, no confrontations. Miss Rodriguez gave him a sympathetic smile as Mia ran into the classroom. The principal watched from her office window but didn't approach. Small mercies. Adrian drove across town through rain that was getting heavier, thinking about Nora. about Victor Langley, about what Dorothy had said. A psychology degree meant Nora understood human behavior, manipulation, trauma responses. She'd know exactly how to document abuse in ways that would hold up under scrutiny. She'd know how to protect herself while gathering evidence. And she'd chosen to do it as a waitress at a diner where Langley was a regular customer. That took courage most people couldn't imagine. The coffee shop was called the Grinding Halt, one of those aggressively quirky places with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls that never sold. Adrian arrived 20 minutes early and ordered something that cost $7 and tasted like someone had burned a forest. He sat in the back corner, watching the door. Nora arrived exactly at 2 o'clock, wearing jeans and a gray sweater, her hair down instead of pulled back. Without the waitress uniform, she looked younger, less tired, but her eyes had the same wariness he'd noticed at the diner, the look of someone who'd learned not to trust easily. She saw him, hesitated for just a moment, then walked over. "Thank you for coming," she said, sitting down across from him. "Dorothy said you had something I needed to see." "I do. But first I need to know, are you who I think you are?" Adrian met her gaze. "Who do you think I am?" "Adrian Vale, as in Vale Holdings, as in the man who owns about 40% of the commercial real estate in this state and has a net worth somewhere north of $3 billion. Nora pulled out her phone, showed him a Forbes article with his picture. Professional headshot, expensive suit, the version of himself he kept carefully separate from flannel shirts and elementary school pickup. That Adrian Vale. There was no point denying it. "Yeah, that's me." "So when you stood up to Victor Langley, you weren't just some random dad. You were someone with enough power to crush him like a bug. You could have told him who you were, threatened him with lawyers and buyouts and whatever billionaires do to people who annoy them. But you didn't." "No." "Why?" Adrian thought about it. "Because it wasn't about power. It was about him putting his hands on you when you asked him to stop. Money doesn't change whether that's wrong." Nora studied him for a long moment. "You really believe that?" "Yeah, I do." She nodded slowly like he'd passed some kind of test. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a tablet. "Okay, then you need to see this." She turned the screen toward him. It showed a spreadsheet, meticulously organized, with dates, times, locations, and brief descriptions. Adrian scanned the entries. March 14th, 2024. VL made sexual comments about my appearance, asked if I was looking for extra work. Recorded on phone, file 0314-A. April 3rd, 2024. VL grabbed my arm when I tried to leave his table. Left bruise. Photographed. File 0403-B. Dorothy witnessed but was afraid to intervene. May 22nd, 2024. VL threatened to have the diner shut down if I reported him. Direct quote. "I know people who can make this place disappear. So can you." Recorded. File 0522-A. The list went on. Months of harassment, threats, assault. Each entry had corresponding files, audio recordings, photographs, witness statements that Nora had somehow collected. "There are 47 documented incidents," Nora said quietly. "Just with me. But I'm not the only one." She swiped to a new section. More spreadsheets, different names. Other women who'd worked at places Victor frequented. Some of them had quit their jobs. One had moved to a different state. Another had filed a police report that mysteriously disappeared. "How did you get all this?" Adrian asked. "I started with my own experiences. Then I reached out to other women, former employees of his company, waitresses at restaurants he goes to, anyone who'd been around him long enough. Some of them talked, some didn't, but enough shared their stories that I could see the pattern." "You've been doing this for 2 years?" 2.5, actually. I started before I even worked at Maple Street. Nora took her tablet back. "I got the job there specifically because I knew Victor ate there twice a week. I needed to document his behavior in a public setting where there would be witnesses, where his patterns would be obvious to anyone paying attention." "That's why you stayed, even when he made your life hell." "That's why I stayed." Her voice was steady, but Adrian could hear the cost underneath. "Do you know how hard it is to smile and pour coffee for a man who threatened to ruin your life the night before? To act like everything's fine while he makes comments about your body in front of other customers? I can't imagine. I did it because someone had to. Victor Langley has been getting away with this for years. He targets women who don't have resources to fight back, who need their jobs too much to risk complaining. He's smart about it. Never quite illegal enough to prosecute, always just careful enough to maintain deniability. But if you collect enough incidents, document enough patterns, you can show that it's not isolated behavior, it's systematic abuse. Adrian looked at the tablet, then back at Nora. You're not just a waitress. I was a therapist, specialized in trauma counseling for abuse survivors. She smiled bitterly. Ironic, right? I spent 3 years helping other women process what had been done to them, and then I became one of them. Lost my job at the clinic after I reported my supervisor for harassment. He had connections, made sure I couldn't get another position in the field. So I took the only work I could find and decided to use what I knew about predators to build something that might actually stop one. Why didn't you go to the police? I tried. 8 months ago, I brought everything I had to a detective. You know what he said? That it was concerning, but not enough for charges. That harassment cases are hard to prove, that Victor would have expensive lawyers, that I should probably just move on with my life. Nora's hands tightened around her coffee cup. He actually suggested I was the problem, that maybe I was encouraging the attention by continuing to work there. Adrian felt anger rise in his chest, hot and familiar. That's how it works when you're up against someone with money and influence. The system's not designed to protect people like me from people like him. So I kept collecting evidence, kept hoping that eventually it would be enough. And now? Now you're involved. And that changes everything. Nora leaned forward. Victor's coming after you because you stood up to him. He's using his connections to damage your reputation, pressure your business relationships, make you regret defending me. But here's what he doesn't know. You have resources he can't touch. You have power he can't leverage. And if you're willing to use it, we can finally expose what he's been doing. Adrian understood what she was asking. You want me to go public with this? Use my platform to make people listen. I want you to help me finish what I started. Victor thinks he's attacking some random guy who got in his face at a diner. He has no idea he's actually going after someone who could destroy his entire empire. That's his mistake. We can use it. What about you? If we do this, if we really go after him, he'll come after you harder than he's coming after me. He's already coming after me. He just doesn't know I've been ready for it. Nora pulled up another file on her tablet. I've documented every threat he's made. I have recordings of him saying he'll have me fired, blacklisted, worse. I have testimony from 3 other women willing to go on record if someone protects them from retaliation. I have financial records showing he used company money to pay off a sexual harassment claim in 2022. How did you get financial records? One of his former assistants, she kept copies of everything before she quit, gave them to me 6 months ago. Nora's expression hardened. Victor Langley made a career out of making women feel powerless. He picked targets he thought were too scared or too poor or too desperate to fight back. What he didn't count on was one of those women being smart enough to turn the tables. Adrian sat back processing everything. This wasn't just about defending a waitress from a bully anymore. This was about dismantling a predator who'd been operating unchecked for years. It was bigger than him, bigger than one viral video. It was also dangerous. If we do this, Adrian said carefully, Victor will fight with everything he has. He'll hire the best lawyers, discredit you, dig up anything in your past he can use. He'll make it ugly. I know. He'll claim you seduced him, that you're lying for attention or money. He'll say I'm using you to get revenge for how he made me look in the press. I know that too. Then why risk it? You could take this evidence to a different jurisdiction, find a prosecutor who actually cares, build a case quietly. You don't need me. Nora met his eyes, and for the first time since sitting down, she smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who'd already decided to jump and was just waiting for the ground to rush up. You're right. I don't need you. I've been doing this alone for 2 years, and I could probably keep doing it alone until I finally find someone who listens. But here's the thing, Mr. Vale. I'm tired. I'm tired of being scared every time I go to work. I'm tired of pretending to be weak while I'm actually strong. And I'm really tired of watching Victor Langley destroy people's lives without consequences. She leaned forward. You stood up for me when you didn't have to. You protected me when it would have been easier to stay seated. That means something. It means maybe, just this once, I don't have to fight alone. The rain outside had picked up, hammering against the windows. The coffee shop was mostly empty. A couple of college students with laptops, an elderly man reading a newspaper. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that in the back corner, two people were planning to take down a man who'd spent years believing he was untouchable. If we're doing this, Adrian said, we do it right. No half measures. We bring everything, your evidence, my resources, any leverage we can find, and we protect everyone involved. That means Dorothy, the other women who gave you testimony, anyone who might get caught in the crossfire. Agreed. I'll need to bring in my legal team, get them up to speed on what you have, make sure it's airtight. I've already organized everything, dates, files, witnesses, it's ready. Adrian pulled out his phone. I'm calling my lawyer right now. We meet with her today, show her what you've got. Then we figure out the strategy. What about Victor? He's probably already planning his next move. Let him plan. He thinks he's fighting a guy who embarrassed him at a diner. He has no idea what's coming. Nora's expression shifted, something like hope mixing with fear. You really think we can win this? I think we can try. That's all anyone can do. They spent the next hour going through Nora's evidence in detail. Every file was meticulously documented. Audio recordings with timestamps, photographs with metadata intact, witness statements that included specific details only someone who was actually there would know. She'd built a case that would make prosecutors weep with joy if they ever actually bothered to look at it. Adrian's lawyer, Catherine Reeves, agreed to meet them at her office at 4. That gave them 2 hours to prepare, to organize, to brace for whatever came next. As they were packing up to leave, Nora's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and went pale. What is it? Adrian asked. She showed him. A text from an unknown number. I know what you're planning. Drop it, or everyone you care about pays the price. This is your only warning. Adrian felt ice in his stomach. When did you get this? Just now. Nora's hands were shaking slightly. He knows. Somehow he knows we're working together. Or he's guessing, sending threats to everyone connected to that night, seeing who flinches. What if he's not guessing? What if he's been watching? Adrian looked around the coffee shop, the college students, the old man with the newspaper, the barista who'd made his terrible $7 coffee. Any of them could be working for Victor, or none of them. Paranoia was exactly what Langley wanted, fear that made people back down. We don't stop, Adrian said firmly. We take this to Catherine, build our response, and we don't let him scare us into silence. He threatened everyone I care about. Who's everyone? Your family? My sister. She's in Portland, has 2 kids. Victor's people could... Hey. Adrian touched her arm gently. Look at me. Victor Langley's power comes from people being too afraid to fight back. That's his whole strategy. But if we fold every time he makes a threat, he wins. We have to be smarter than that. Nora took a shaky breath. You're right. I know you're right. It's just scary. I know. But you've been doing the scary thing for 2 years. Don't stop now. She managed a weak smile. You're better at pep talks than I expected from a billionaire. I had a daughter who refused to sleep without me checking for monsters every night for 2 years. You learn how to be reassuring. They left separately, Nora first, then Adrian 10 minutes later. Probably unnecessary caution, but neither of them wanted to take chances. Adrian drove through the rain, checking his mirrors more than usual, noticing cars that might be following but probably weren't. His phone rang. Marcus. We have a problem, his head of security said without preamble. What kind of problem? The kind where someone just leaked your home address to 3 different doxing websites. You've got about 4 hours before it spreads everywhere. I'm sending a team to your house now to set up enhanced security, but you need to get Mia somewhere safe, tonight. Adrian's grip tightened on the steering wheel. He's escalating. Victor? Yeah. And fast. This isn't just business pressure anymore. This is personal. He's trying to scare you, make you feel vulnerable. It's working. Then let it work enough to piss you off, not enough to make you back down. You've been playing defense since this started. Maybe it's time to hit back. Adrian thought about Nora's evidence, about 2 years of careful documentation, about women who'd been hurt and scared into silence. I'm meeting with Catherine at 4, bringing someone with information Victor really doesn't want public. Good. Make it count, because after tonight, this is going to get a lot worse before it gets better. They hung up. Adrian called his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who'd been watching Mia sometimes since his wife died. She agreed to pick me up from school and keep her overnight. No questions asked beyond, "Are you in trouble?" To which Adrian had answered, "I'm handling it." Then he called the school and authorized Mrs. Patterson for pickup. The secretary sounded concerned but didn't push. One thing handled, 1,000 more to go. Catherine Reeves's office was in a high-rise downtown, all glass and steel that screamed expensive justice. She met them in a conference room with a view of the city, rain streaking the windows like the world was crying. Catherine was 52, Korean-American, with the kind of sharp intelligence that made opposing lawyers nervous. She'd been Adrian's lawyer for 7 years, handling everything from contract disputes to the occasional threat from competitors who thought they could pressure him. She'd never lost a case. "Okay," Catherine said, settling into her chair. "Marcus gave me the basics, but I want to hear it from you. All of it." Adrian and Nora spent the next 90 minutes walking her through everything. The diner incident, Victor's retaliation, Nora's investigation, the evidence she'd collected. Catherine listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad in handwriting that looked like it had been designed to be unreadable. When they finished, she sat back and studied them both. "This is good," she said finally. "Better than good. If half of what you've documented is accurate, Victor Langley is looking at civil liability that could run into 8 figures. Maybe criminal charges if we find the right prosecutor." "But?" Adrian heard the hesitation in her voice. "But this is also incredibly messy. You've got a billionaire defending a waitress who turns out to be running a covert investigation. Victor's lawyers will claim entrapment, that Nora deliberately put herself in situations to provoke him, that she's been planning this whole thing as some kind of setup." "It wasn't entrapment," Nora said sharply. "I documented real abuse. Everything he did was his choice. I know that. But Victor's team will argue differently. They'll say you had an agenda, that you manipulated situations to make him look bad. They'll dig into your past, why you lost your job at the clinic, what happened with your supervisor. They'll try to paint you as someone with a grudge against powerful men. Let them try." Catherine's expression softened. "I admire your courage, but I need you to understand what you're signing up for. If we go public with this, your life becomes an open book. Every relationship, every mistake, every vulnerable moment, it all gets scrutinized. Are you ready for that?" Nora looked at Adrian, then back at Catherine. "I've been ready for 2 years. Let's do this." "Okay," Catherine turned to Adrian. "And you? Victor's already attacking your reputation. This will make it worse before it gets better. Your business relationships will take more hits. You'll be accused of using your wealth to silence critics or manipulate the narrative. Some people will call you a hero, others will call you a predator protecting his own. Are you ready for that?" Adrian thought about Mia, about the home address that was about to be everywhere, about the journalists and the death threats, and the way his daughter's school looked at him like a problem to be managed. "Yeah," he said. "I'm ready." Catherine nodded. "Then here's what we do. We file a civil suit against Victor Langley for assault, harassment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We include Nora's evidence as supporting documentation. We hold a press conference where both of you explain exactly what happened and what we've uncovered. And we make it very clear that this isn't about revenge. It's about accountability." "When?" Adrian asked. "Tomorrow. We move fast, before Victor can get ahead of it. I'll draft the filing tonight, have it ready to submit first thing in the morning. Press conference at noon. That gives news outlets time to pick it up for the evening cycle." "Victor will respond," Nora said. "Of course he will. He'll call you a liar, call Adrian a manipulator, throw everything he has at discrediting both of you. But here's the thing. Once this evidence is part of a legal filing, it becomes public record. Every journalist in the country will have access to it. Victor can spin all he wants, but the facts will speak for themselves." They spent another hour planning specifics. What to include in the filing, what to hold back for later. How to protect the other women who'd given testimony. What to say at the press conference, what questions to avoid. By the time they finished, night had fallen and the rain had turned to mist. Adrian's head hurt, and he was running on maybe 6 hours of sleep over the last 3 days. But for the first time since the diner incident, he felt like maybe they had a chance. Catherine walked them to the elevator. "Get some rest tonight, both of you. Tomorrow's going to be intense." "Thank you," Nora said, "for believing us." "I don't believe based on feelings," Catherine replied. "I believe based on evidence. And you've got evidence that would make a prosecutor's career. We just have to make sure it doesn't get buried." In the parking garage, Nora turned to Adrian. I'm scared. Me too. What if this doesn't work? What if we go through all of this and Victor still wins? Adrian didn't have a good answer. Then at least we tried. At least we stood up. Is that enough? It has to be. They stood there for a moment, two people who'd been strangers 5 days ago, now bound together by shared trauma and the decision to fight back. My sister, Nora said quietly. If something happens to her because of this, it won't. I'm putting security on her tonight, and on Dorothy, and on anyone else who might be a target. Victor wants us scared? Fine. But he doesn't get to hurt people we care about. Nora's eyes were bright. You didn't have to do any of this. You could have walked away the second things got complicated. Yeah, I could have. But then I'd have to explain to my daughter why I stopped doing the right thing when it got hard. And I'm not ready to have that conversation. They said goodnight and drove off in separate directions. Adrian headed to Mrs. Patterson's house to check on Mia, his phone already buzzing with updates from Marcus about security arrangements, media monitoring, potential threats that were probably nothing but couldn't be ignored. Mia was in her pajamas, watching a cartoon about talking vegetables. She ran to him when he came in. Daddy, Mrs. Patterson made cookies. That's great, baby. Adrian hugged her tight, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. Are you staying tonight? No, sweetheart. Daddy has to work. But you'll have fun here, right? I guess. She looked up at him with serious eyes. Are you in trouble? No, well, maybe a little, but I'm fixing it. Is it because of the mean man from the restaurant? Yeah, but don't worry about that. You just worry about being 6 and eating too many cookies, okay? She giggled, and the sound was the only good thing that had happened all day. Adrian left after reading her one story and promising he'd pick her up tomorrow after school. Mrs. Patterson walked him to the door. Whatever you're dealing with, she said quietly, you're a good man. Don't let anyone make you forget that. Thank you, Helen. And if anyone comes around here asking about Mia, they'll have to go through me first. I've got a baseball bat and no patience for nonsense. Despite everything, Adrian smiled. I believe you. He drove home to a house that felt too empty. Marcus's security team had installed cameras and upgraded the locks. There was a car parked across the street with 2 people inside, private security, there to make sure no one tried anything stupid. Adrian microwaved something that was supposed to be dinner, ate 3 bites, and gave up. He sat on his couch with all the lights off, looking at his phone. The video was at 31 million views now. The comments had become a war zone. Someone had created an entire website dedicated to exposing him as a fraud. Another site called him a hero and was selling t-shirts with his face on them. His life had become a commodity, something for strangers to debate and dissect and decide. But tomorrow, he'd start fighting back. Tomorrow, Victor Langley would learn that some prey fought back. And sometimes, the hunter became the hunted. Adrian didn't sleep that night either. He sat at his kitchen table with Catherine's drafted filing open on his laptop, reading through legal language that translated Nora's 2 years of hell into sterile paragraphs about intentional torts and compensatory damages. The evidence was attached as exhibits, 47 incidents reduced to numbered appendices. At 4:17 a.m., his phone buzzed. Marcus, MC. Langley's making moves. His legal team filed an emergency restraining order against you, claiming you're harassing him, that the diner incident was premeditated assault. Adrian typed back with hands that wanted to shake but didn't. AV. On what grounds? MC. They're saying you've been obsessively following his business activities, that you engineered the confrontation, that you're now conspiring with a disgruntled employee to destroy his reputation. It's creative fiction. AV. Will it work? MC. Not if we file first. Catherine needs to submit by 8 a.m. The restraining order hearing isn't until 2 p.m. We beat them to the punch. Their narrative falls apart. AV. Then we file at 8. MC. Already told Catherine. She's at the courthouse now, waiting for the clerk's office to open. Adrian set his phone down and stared at the pre-dawn darkness outside his window. Somewhere across town, Victor Langley was probably awake too, orchestrating his defense, calling in favors, preparing to bury them both under an avalanche of legal motions and PR spin. But Victor had made a critical mistake. He thought he was fighting a man who'd gotten lucky with some viral video attention. He didn't know he was fighting someone who'd spent 15 years learning how to dismantle companies and rebuild them from the ground up. Someone who understood that real power wasn't about being the loudest voice in the room, it was about controlling the room entirely. By 6 a.m., Adrian was showered, dressed in one of the suits he rarely wore anymore, looking like the billionaire he actually was. The transformation was deliberate. No more flannel shirts and tired dad energy. Today he needed to be Adrian Vale, the man who'd turned a dishwashing job into a fortune, who'd negotiated deals with people who ate CEOs like Victor Langley for breakfast. Catherine called at 7:43. It's filed. Clerk's office just opened, and we were first in line. The lawsuit is officially public record. How long until the media picks it up? I'd say about... Catherine paused. Never mind. A P just sent out an alert. Here we go. Adrian pulled up his phone. The Associated Press notification read, Billionaire Adrian Vale files suit against CEO. Victor Langley for assault, harassment, claims. Pattern of abuse against multiple women. Within minutes, every major outlet was running versions of the story. Some led with Adrian's identity finally being revealed. Others focused on the allegations against Victor. A few enterprising journalists had already started digging through the public filing, pulling out the most damaging details. His phone exploded with calls. He ignored all of them, except one. Mr. Vale? It was Dorothy from the diner, her voice shaking. I just saw the news. Is it true? Is Nora really... Everything in that filing is documented and verified, Adrian said. I know this is going to bring attention to the diner. I'm sorry for that. Don't be sorry. Be successful. That man's been terrorizing my staff for 3 years, and I couldn't do anything about it because I need this business to survive. Dorothy's voice hardened. You take him down, you hear me? You take him all the way down. That's the plan. And Nora, is she safe? He's going to come after her hard. She's protected. I've got security on her, on you, on everyone connected to this. He won't touch any of you. After they hung up, Adrian drove to Catherine's office. The press conference was scheduled for noon, but they needed to prep, to anticipate questions, to make sure their message was airtight. Nora was already there when he arrived, looking pale but determined. She dressed carefully too, professional but not expensive, approachable but not weak. Every detail mattered now. Every image would be analyzed. I threw up this morning, she said without preamble. Twice. I'm terrified. That's normal. Is it? Because you look completely calm. Adrian loosened his tie slightly. I'm faking it. Inside, I feel like I'm about to jump off a cliff. That's actually reassuring. Catherine entered carrying a tablet and 3 cups of coffee that smelled significantly better than the $7 disaster from yesterday. Okay, people, let's talk strategy. The press conference is in 4 hours. Victor's team is already spinning this as a conspiracy between a vindictive woman and a wealthy man looking for publicity. We need to counter that narrative immediately. How? Nora asked. By being completely transparent. We show the evidence, we explain the timeline, we make it clear this isn't about revenge. It's about holding someone accountable for years of documented abuse. Catherine set her tablet on the conference table. Adrian, you're going to speak first. Establish the facts of the diner incident from your perspective. No emotions, no attacks on Victor's character. Just what you saw and why you intervened. Got it. Nora, you're going second. This is where we shift from one incident to a pattern. You explain who you are, why you started investigating, and what you found. The key is to humanize the other women without making it sound like you were running some kind of vigilante operation. What if they ask why I didn't go to the police sooner? You tell them you did. You tell them exactly what that detective said to you. Let the public decide if that's acceptable. Catherine looked between them. Questions will get hostile. Someone will ask if you're having an affair. Someone will suggest Adrian paid you to make these accusations. Someone will definitely ask about the timing. Why file the lawsuit the same day Victor filed a restraining order? What do we say to that? Adrian asked. The truth. We didn't know about the restraining order until after we filed. The timing is coincidental, and it shows Victor is trying to use the legal system to silence victims. Don't get defensive. Don't attack. Just state facts and let the audience draw their own conclusions. They spent the next 3 hours running through potential questions, refining their statements, making sure their stories aligned without sounding rehearsed. Catherine was relentless, playing the role of hostile journalist with uncomfortable accuracy. Ms. Hayes, isn't it true you lost your previous job due to making false accusations against a supervisor? Nora didn't flinch. I reported harassment. My supervisor used his connections to have me fired. That's exactly the pattern of retaliation we're talking about. Mr. Vale, some people are calling this a publicity stunt. How do you respond? I respond by pointing to the evidence. 47 documented incidents, audio recordings, photographs, witness testimony. If that's a publicity stunt, it's the most elaborate one in history. At 11:30, Marcus arrived with an update that made Adrian's stomach drop. Victor's holding his own press conference right now. He moved it up to get ahead of ours. Catherine swore quietly. Get it on screen. They gathered around the monitor as Victor Langley appeared, standing at a podium with the Meridian Holdings logo behind him. He looked perfectly composed, every inch the wronged businessman. Thank you for coming on short notice, Victor began. I'm sure you've all seen the baseless lawsuit filed against me this morning. I want to address it directly, because silence in the face of lies is complicity. Adrian watched, his jaw tight. Adrian Vale and Nora Hayes have conspired to destroy my reputation through fabricated evidence and manufactured claims. Ms. Hayes is a former mental health professional who lost her job due to erratic behavior and false accusations against her colleagues. Mr. Vale is a reclusive billionaire who apparently decided that buying companies wasn't enough. He needed to buy a narrative. He's good, Nora whispered. He's really good. The so-called evidence they've presented is a combination of selectively edited recordings, misrepresented conversations, and outright lies. I have never harassed anyone. I have never assaulted anyone. What I have done is hold people accountable in professional settings, which apparently some individuals find threatening. Victor paused, his expression shifting to something meant to look wounded. I understand that in today's climate, accusations alone are enough to destroy careers. Due process doesn't matter. Evidence doesn't matter. All that matters is the story, and whoever tells it first. Well, I'm telling you now, this is a coordinated attack by two people with an agenda. Ms. Hayes has been planning this for years, carefully documenting normal workplace interactions and twisting them into something sinister. Mr. Vale got involved after I allegedly mistreated her at a diner. But what the viral video doesn't show is that Ms. Hayes and I had a history. She'd been following me, showing up at places I frequent, trying to manufacture confrontations. That's not true, Nora said, her voice rising. I worked there. I didn't follow him. He came to my workplace. I know, Catherine said, and we'll prove it. Let him dig his hole deeper. Victor continued, his voice taking on a righteous tone. I'm filing countersuits for defamation, conspiracy, and abuse of process. I will not let my name be dragged through the mud by people who see a wealthy target and think they can cash in. This ends today. He took a few questions, all softballs from reporters who either liked him or feared him. Then he dropped the bomb. One more thing. I'm offering a reward, $100,000, to anyone who can provide evidence that Ms. Hayes' claims are fabricated. Recordings, messages, anything that shows she's been planning this attack. Because I know the truth will come out, and when it does, both Mr. Vale and Ms. Hayes will face the consequences of their actions. The press conference ended. Adrian, Nora, and Catherine sat in silence for a moment. Well, Catherine said finally, that complicates things. He just offered money for people to lie about me, Nora said, her voice hollow. He's literally paying for false evidence, which is witness tampering and obstruction of justice. We'll add it to the filing. Catherine stood up. But right now we stick to the plan. Our press conference is in 20 minutes. We present the facts, we stay calm, and we let the evidence speak. The venue was a hotel conference room downtown, packed with journalists, cameras, and people whose job was to turn human tragedy into content. Adrian felt the weight of their attention the moment he walked in, Nora beside him, Catherine trailing with her tablet and briefcase. They took their seats at a table facing the crowd. Microphones clustered in front of them like mechanical flowers. Camera flashes went off even though nothing was happening yet. Catherine spoke first, laying out the legal framework. Civil suit, assault, and battery. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Pattern of harassment spanning multiple years and victims. Her voice was clinical, professional, the kind of calm that came from years of courtroom experience. Then it was Adrian's turn. He looked out at the sea of faces and felt his carefully prepared statement start to crumble. These weren't just journalists, these were people who would decide what story got told, how it got framed, whether anyone would believe them. "My name is Adrian Vale," he began, his voice steady despite the nerves. "Most of you probably know me from a video that went viral last week. What you don't know is what I saw before someone started recording." He walked them through it, the casual cruelty in Victor's voice, the way Nora had tried to de-escalate, the moment Victor grabbed her wrist. He didn't embellish, didn't add drama, just the facts, delivered in the same tone he'd use in a boardroom presentation. "I stood up because someone was being hurt, and no one else was doing anything about it. That's all. I didn't know who Victor Langley was. I didn't know Nora Hayes had been documenting his behavior for 2 years. I just knew that what I was witnessing was wrong, and staying seated would make me complicit." A reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Vale, Victor Langley claims you orchestrated this confrontation, that you knew who he was and deliberately provoked him. Victor Langley is lying. I took my daughter to dinner at a diner near our house. He showed up with colleagues. I'd never met him, never spoken to him, didn't know anything about him until after the incident when people started identifying him online. But you're a billionaire. Surely you knew of Meridian Holdings? I'm aware of most major companies in the region. That doesn't mean I memorized the faces of every CEO. And even if I had known who he was, it wouldn't change the fact that he put his hands on someone who asked to be left alone." Another reporter. "Ms. Hayes, you have a master's degree in psychology. You lost your previous job. Why were you working as a waitress?" Nora took a breath. Adrian could see her hands shaking slightly under the table. "I lost my job because I reported sexual harassment by my supervisor. He used his position to make sure I couldn't get another job in my field. So I took work where I could find it. And yes, I chose Maple Street Diner specifically because I knew Victor Langley ate there regularly. I chose it because I wanted to document his behavior in a public setting where there would be witnesses." "So you admit you were targeting him?" "I admit I was documenting abuse. Victor Langley has a pattern of harassing women in service positions. Waitresses, assistants, anyone he perceives as beneath him. I wanted proof that would be undeniable. So I took a job where I could observe him while protecting myself with witnesses and security cameras." "That sounds like entrapment." "Entrapment is when you induce someone to commit a crime they wouldn't otherwise commit. I didn't make Victor Langley grab my wrist. I didn't make him make sexual comments or threaten my job or tell me I was worthless. He did those things because that's who he is. I just documented it." The questions came faster, more aggressive. Someone asked if Adrian was paying Nora. Someone else asked if they were having an affair. A reporter from a conservative outlet suggested Nora was part of a culture of false accusations destroying innocent men. Catherine fielded that one. Innocent men don't have 47 documented incidents spanning 2 years. Innocent men don't threaten witnesses or use company resources to intimidate victims. And innocent men certainly don't offer 6-figure rewards for fabricated evidence. "You're referring to Mr. Langley's reward offer?" "I'm referring to witness tampering, which we'll be reporting to the appropriate authorities." The conference lasted 90 minutes. By the time it ended, Adrian felt like he'd been through a fight. His shirt was damp with sweat under his suit jacket. Nora looked ready to collapse. But they'd done it. They'd presented their case to the world. Now they had to wait and see if anyone believed them. The response was immediate and polarized. Within an hour, hashtags were trending on both sides. Hashtag Believe Nora and hashtag Langley's Lies competed with hashtag False Accusations and hashtag Gold Diggers. Think pieces appeared arguing both positions. Legal analysts debated the strength of the case on cable news. Adrian ignored most of it. He picked up Mia from Mrs. Patterson's house, took her home, made her chicken nuggets for dinner, and tried to pretend the world wasn't dissecting his life in real time. "Daddy, you're on TV," Mia said, pointing at the tablet she wasn't supposed to have at the dinner table. Adrian gently took it away. "I know, baby. Don't worry about it. Are you famous now?" "Kind of. But the boring kind of famous, not the fun kind." "What's the fun kind?" "Astronauts, or people who discover dinosaurs. I'm just the kind who talks to reporters." She accepted this explanation with the easy logic of 6-year-olds and went back to her chicken nuggets. That night, after Mia was asleep, Adrian sat in his home office staring at an email that had arrived an hour ago. The sender was listed as V. Langley. The subject line, "Final offer." He opened it. Vale? You've made your point. You're not just some random dad, you're someone with resources and a vendetta. Fine. I respect that, even if I think you're misguided. Here's my offer. Drop the lawsuit, make a joint statement saying this was all a misunderstanding, and I'll make this worth your while. 10 million to your favorite charity. Nora Hayes gets a severance package that ensures she never has to work another service job. Everyone walks away clean, or we can keep fighting. I've got lawyers who make your lawyer look like a public defender. I've got connections in every business sector that matters. And I've got the patience to drag this out for years, destroying both of you slowly while I continue running my company. Your choice. But choose fast. This offer expires in 24 hours. VL Adrian read it twice, then forwarded it to Catherine with a single word. Interesting. She called immediately. Don't even think about it. I'm not, but it shows he's worried. He's terrified. That press conference hit harder than he expected. Social media is turning against him. 3 of his board members called me asking if the allegations are true. His board? Victor doesn't have absolute control of Meridian Holdings. He's CEO, but there's a board of directors who can remove him if they decide he's a liability. And right now, he's becoming radioactive. Adrian felt something shift in his chest. Not quite hope, but possibility. What do we do? We keep the pressure on. I've got 3 more women ready to come forward with their own stories about Victor. I want to add them to an amended filing tomorrow. And I want to call a shareholders meeting. You want to go after his company? I want to give his board a choice. Keep a CEO who's facing multiple lawsuits and massive PR damage, or cut him loose and save the company. Business is about numbers, Adrian. Right now, Victor's a bad investment. That's ruthless. That's justice. He used his company's power to hurt people. We use that same company to hold him accountable. They talked strategy for another hour. By the time they hung up, Adrian had a plan forming. It was aggressive, maybe too aggressive. But Victor had made one critical mistake. He'd gone after Mia. Not directly. Not yet. But the doxing, the leaked address, the veiled threats, all of it was designed to make Adrian feel like his daughter wasn't safe. Like nowhere was safe. That crossed a line. Adrian opened his laptop and started making calls. First to his investment team, then to his network of business contacts, then to people who knew people who sat on Meridian Holdings' board of directors. He'd spent years building relationships, earning trust, proving he was someone who kept his word and delivered results. Now he was calling in every favor, leveraging every connection, using the full weight of his resources for the first time since this started. If Victor wanted a war, he'd get one, but it wouldn't be fought in the press or the courts alone. It would be fought in the boardroom where Victor thought he was untouchable. By 2 a.m., Adrian had commitments from 4 institutional investors who collectively owned 38% of Meridian Holdings. They'd all expressed serious concerns about Victor's leadership and wanted an emergency board meeting to discuss the company's direction. Catherine had drafted the formal request. It would be delivered in the morning. Adrian finally allowed himself to sleep, setting his alarm for 5 hours that would probably feel like 5 minutes. He dreamed about his wife. She was standing in their old kitchen, the one they'd renovated together before Mia was born, before cancer took her and left him alone with the toddler and grief so heavy he thought it might actually kill him. "You're doing the right thing," she said in the dream, though his wife had never been one for easy reassurance. She'd been practical, sometimes brutally honest, always challenging him to be better than he thought he could be. "Am I?" Dream Adrian asked. "Or am I just making everything worse? Does it matter? You already chose. Now finish it." He woke up at dawn with that sentence still echoing. The emergency board meeting request hit Meridian Holdings at 9 a.m. By 9:30, Victor's lawyers were calling it shareholder manipulation and corporate sabotage. By 10, 2 major business outlets were reporting on the internal chaos at Meridian. By 11 o'clock, Victor Langley called Adrian directly. Adrian almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "You son of a bitch," Victor said without preamble. "You're trying to steal my company. I'm trying to hold you accountable. There's a difference. You think you can just waltz in and turn my board against me? I built Meridian from nothing. Those people owe me everything. Those people owe fiduciary duty to shareholders, and right now you're damaging shareholder value. They'll cut you loose to save the company. This is about that waitress? About one night at a diner? You're willing to destroy everything over that? Adrian's grip tightened on his phone. It's not about one night. It's about 47 documented incidents. It's about women you've terrorized for years. It's about using your position to hurt people who couldn't fight back. Everyone I allegedly hurt knew exactly what they were getting into. They made choices. They made choices under duress. That's not consent, Victor. That's coercion. You don't understand how the world works. Power exists. Some people have it, some people don't. That's not my fault. You're right. But how you use that power, that is your fault. Victor was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, less angry, more calculating. Name your price. What do you want to make this go away? I want you out of Meridian. I want you to face consequences for what you've done. And I want every woman you've hurt to know that someone actually listened. That's not going to happen. Then I guess we'll see you at the board meeting. Adrian hung up. His hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something else. The recognition that he'd just crossed a point of no return. This wasn't just about defending Nora anymore. This was about dismantling a predator piece by piece until there was nothing left but the truth. The board meeting was scheduled for 3 days later. 72 hours for Victor to mount his defense, to call in his own favors, to try to save himself. But Adrian had been preparing for this fight longer than Victor realized. Sometimes the best revenge wasn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was just patient, methodical, and absolutely unavoidable. The 72 hours before the board meeting felt like living in a pressure cooker. Victor's team worked overtime, leaking carefully constructed stories to friendly journalists, painting Adrian as a corporate raider using false allegations as cover for a hostile takeover. They dug up every business decision Adrian had ever made that resulted in layoffs, framing him as a ruthless billionaire who destroyed lives for profit. Some of it was true. Adrian had made hard choices over the years, closed divisions that weren't sustainable, restructured companies in ways that cost people their jobs. Business wasn't clean. It never had been. But there was a difference between making difficult decisions and deliberately hurting people because you could. Victor didn't seem to understand that distinction. 2 days before the meeting, 3 more women came forward publicly, adding their voices to Nora's. One was a former executive assistant who'd quit after Victor cornered her in a supply room. Another was a restaurant manager who'd banned Victor from her establishment after he grabbed a server. The third was a lawyer who'd worked on a case against Meridian and received threatening messages that she'd traced back to Victor's personal phone. Their stories were different in details but identical in pattern. Victor identified vulnerable targets, used his position to intimidate them, and relied on people's fear of retaliation to keep them quiet. Catherine added all 3 to the amended filing. The lawsuit was no longer just about one waitress at one diner. It was about systematic abuse spanning years. The night before the board meeting, Adrian couldn't sit still. He paced his living room while Mia slept upstairs, checking his phone every few minutes for updates from Catherine, from Marcus, from the investigators who were still digging into Victor's financial records, looking for anything else they could use. At 11:47 p.m., his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Hello? Mr. Vale." A man's voice, older, unfamiliar. "My name is Robert Chen. I'm on the board of directors at Meridian Holdings. I'm calling because I need you to understand what you're walking into tomorrow." Adrian sat down slowly. "I'm listening." Victor Langley is a lot of things, but he's not stupid. He knows the shareholders are turning against him. He knows the lawsuits are damaging the company's reputation, so he's prepared a defense that might actually work. What kind of defense? He's going to argue that removing him would be admitting guilt, that the company would be liable for massive damages if the board acknowledges his behavior was wrong. He's going to threaten to fight any termination, to drag Meridian through years of litigation that will cost more than just paying him to stay. That's extortion. That's business. And some board members are going to find it persuasive, especially the ones who benefited from Victor's leadership over the years. Robert paused. "I'm calling because I want you to know that I'm voting to remove him. So are 3 others. But we need 7 votes out of 12. Right now, it's close." "What do I need to do?" "You need to give the board a better option than Victor's scorched earth litigation. You need to show them that removing him protects the company, not destroys it. And you need to do it in a way that doesn't make them feel like they're just trading one corporate bully for another." "I'm not trying to take over Meridian. I know, but some board members think you are. They think this whole thing is just an elaborate hostile takeover disguised as social justice. Robert's voice softened. Prove them wrong tomorrow. Show them you actually care about doing the right thing, not just winning. They talked for 20 more minutes. Robert gave him insights into each board member, who was sympathetic, who was loyal to Victor, who might be swayed by the right argument. By the time they hung up, Adrian had a clearer picture of the battlefield. He called Catherine. I need to speak at the meeting tomorrow, not just present evidence. Actually speak to the board members directly. That's risky. Victor's lawyers will try to tear you apart. Let them try. This whole thing started because I stood up when I should have stayed seated. I'm not changing strategy now. Catherine was quiet for a moment. Okay, but we do it my way. I script what you say and you stick to it. No improvising, no emotional responses. You're a businessman presenting a case, not a crusader on a mission. Fine. They worked until 3 a.m., crafting a statement that threaded the needle between accountability and pragmatism. Adrian rehearsed it until the words felt natural, until he could deliver them without sounding like he was reading from a script. When he finally tried to sleep, his mind kept replaying the diner incident. Victor's hand on Nora's wrist, the casual cruelty in his voice, the way everyone else in that restaurant had looked away, uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. How many times had that scene played out over the years? How many people had witnessed Victor's behavior and chosen silence? Adrian had chosen differently. And now, lying in bed at 4 a.m. with a board meeting in 9 hours, he wondered if that choice had been naive or necessary. Maybe both. The Meridian Holdings boardroom was on the 43rd floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and polished wood, and the kind of expensive minimalism that screamed corporate power. Adrian arrived with Catherine at 1:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the scheduled start. Victor was already there, surrounded by 4 lawyers who looked like they'd been bred in the same laboratory that produced corporate sharks. He wore a navy suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, and his expression was carefully neutral. No anger, no fear, just the calm confidence of someone who'd fought these battles before and won. The board members filtered in. 12 people representing billions in shareholder value, each one carrying the weight of fiduciary responsibility and personal interest. Robert Chen nodded slightly at Adrian. 2 others avoided eye contact entirely. The chairman, an elderly man named Howard Prescott, who'd been on the board since Meridian's founding, called the meeting to order at exactly 2 p.m. We're here to address the recent allegations against CEO Victor Langley and their impact on the company. Mr. Langley, you'll have the opportunity to present your defense. Mr. Vale, as the plaintiff in the civil suit, you'll be allowed to present your concerns. Then the board will deliberate privately and vote on Mr. Langley's continued employment. Victor stood first. His lawyers had prepared a presentation, slides with financial data showing Meridian's growth under his leadership, testimonials from employees praising his vision, character references from business leaders and politicians. What you're seeing, Victor said, gesturing at the screen, is 15 years of success. When I took over Meridian, we were a regional investment firm managing $200 million in assets. Today, we manage over $4 billion. I've created jobs, generated returns for shareholders, and built this company into a respected name in the industry. He paused, making eye contact with each board member. Now I'm being attacked by a disgruntled former employee and a billionaire with a savior complex. The allegations against me are fabricated, the evidence is manipulated, and the entire campaign is designed to damage my reputation and, by extension, damage Meridian Holdings. One of his lawyers stood up. We've prepared detailed rebuttals to each allegation. Ms. Hayes' recordings have been taken out of context. The photographs show normal workplace interactions. The witness statements come from people with grudges against Mr. Langley or financial incentive to lie. Furthermore, Victor continued, if this board removes me based on these allegations, you're essentially admitting that Meridian Holdings employed a serial harasser for 15 years. That opens the company to massive liability. Victims could sue Meridian for enabling my behavior. Shareholders could sue for negligence. The damage would be incalculable. It was a brilliant trap. Admit Victor was guilty, and the company would bleed money in lawsuits. Keep him on, and the company might survive with its reputation bruised, but finances intact. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. This was exactly what Robert had warned about. Howard Prescott looked at Adrian. Mr. Vale, you have the floor. Adrian stood, leaving his notes on the table. Catherine shot him a warning look. Stick to the script. But he couldn't. This moment required something more than prepared remarks. I'm not here to take over Meridian Holdings, he began. I don't want your company, and I don't want Victor's job. I'm here because 10 days ago, I watched him assault someone in a public diner, and when I tried to stop it, he used his resources to try to destroy my life. He looked at Victor, then back at the board. Mr. Langley is right about one thing. Removing him is complicated. It might expose Meridian to lawsuits. It might damage the company's reputation. Those are legitimate concerns. Adrian paused. But here's what keeping him costs. Your integrity. Every day Victor Langley remains CEO is a day this company says that abuse is acceptable if it's profitable, that women's safety matters less than shareholder returns, that power gives you the right to hurt people without consequences. One of the board members, a woman in her 50s named Patricia Moreno, leaned forward. With all due respect, Mr. Vale, you're asking us to potentially bankrupt this company over allegations that haven't been proven in court. I'm asking you to do the right thing even when it's expensive. And these allegations have been proven. We have recordings, photographs, testimony from multiple women. What hasn't happened yet is a criminal conviction, but that's because our legal system is designed to protect powerful men like Victor, not the people they hurt. Victor's lawyer stood up. This is exactly the kind of inflammatory rhetoric. Let him finish, Robert Chen said sharply. Adrian took a breath. I know what it's like to make hard business decisions. I've closed divisions, restructured companies, done things that cost people their jobs because it was necessary for survival. I'm not naive about how business works. But there's a difference between difficult decisions and deliberate cruelty. Victor Langley doesn't just make tough calls. He targets vulnerable people because he enjoys it. That's not leadership. That's abuse of power. He pulled out his phone, connected it to the boardroom screen. Nora's spreadsheet appeared, 47 documented incidents laid out in brutal detail. This isn't one disgruntled employee. This is a pattern spanning years. And every day you keep him in that chair is a day you're complicit in this pattern continuing. Victor stood abruptly. This board doesn't answer to vigilantes and fabricated evidence. You want to remove me? Fine. But I'll fight it. I'll sue this company for wrongful termination. I'll tie Meridian up in litigation for the next decade. And when I'm done, there won't be anything left worth saving. Then you're proving my point, Adrian said quietly. You're threatening to destroy the company you claim to love because you can't accept consequences for your actions. That's not leadership. That's a child throwing a tantrum. The room went silent. Howard Prescott looked at Victor, then at Adrian, then at the spreadsheet still displayed on the screen. Mr. Langley, I need to ask you directly. Are these allegations true? No. All 47 incidents are fabricated? They're misrepresentations of normal interactions taken out of context by someone with an agenda. Then you won't mind if we launch an independent investigation. Hire outside counsel to review the evidence, interview the women involved, verify or disprove these claims. Victor's jaw tightened. That's unnecessary. It would be expensive, time-consuming, and I'm not asking permission. I'm informing you that as of this moment, you're on administrative leave pending investigation. The board will appoint an interim CEO, and you will cooperate fully with the independent review. If the allegations are proven false, you'll be reinstated with an apology. If they're proven true, your employment is terminated immediately. You can't do this. I'm chairman of this board. I absolutely can do this. Howard looked at the other members. All in favor? 6 hands went up immediately. After a moment's hesitation, 2 more joined them. 8 votes out of 12. It was done. Victor's face went red. You're making a mistake, all of you. This company will collapse without me, and when it does, remember that you chose political correctness over profits. We chose accountability over enabling abuse, Patricia Moreno said. There's a difference. Victor grabbed his briefcase, his lawyer scrambling to follow. He stopped at the door, looking back at Adrian. This isn't over. You think you won, but all you did was make an enemy who has nothing left to lose. Then I guess we'll both find out what that means, Adrian replied. Victor left, the door closing behind him with a sound like a judge's gavel. The boardroom exhaled collectively. Howard Prescott rubbed his temples like he'd just aged 5 years in 5 minutes. Mr. Vale, thank you for bringing this to our attention. And I mean that. even though it's going to cost this company a fortune in legal fees and lost reputation. Sometimes the right thing is expensive. Sometimes it is. Howard stood, extending his hand. For what it's worth, I believe you. I believe those women. And I'm sorry it took a viral video and a lawsuit to make us pay attention. They shook hands. Adrian felt something in his chest loosen slightly. Not relief exactly, but the recognition that maybe, just maybe, the fight had been worth it. Catherine touched his elbow. We should go. Let them handle the cleanup. Outside the building, Nora was waiting with Marcus. She'd watched the whole thing via video feed from Catherine's office, and her eyes were red like she'd been crying. Is it real? She asked. Is he actually gone? He's on leave pending investigation. But yeah, he's gone. Nora covered her mouth with both hands, her shoulders shaking. Adrian wasn't sure if she was laughing or sobbing or both. 2 years, she said finally. 2 years of documenting everything, being afraid every single day, wondering if anyone would ever listen. And you did it in 10 days. No, you did it in 2 years. I just gave you a platform. We did it together. Nora wiped her eyes. What happens now? Now the investigation happens. They'll verify everything in your documentation, interview the other women, build an official record that can't be dismissed or ignored. And Victor? Victor faces consequences for the first time in his life. Whether that's criminal charges or just permanent career damage, I don't know. But he won't hurt anyone else. That's what matters. They stood on the sidewalk in afternoon sun that felt warmer than it should for October. People rushed past on their way to meetings and appointments, oblivious to the fact that something significant had just happened 43 floors above them. Marcus cleared his throat. I hate to break up the moment, but we've got about 17 news crews waiting outside Adrian's house. Someone leaked that the board meeting happened. Of course they did. Adrian sighed. Okay, Catherine, draft a statement, something short. We're pleased the board took these allegations seriously. We look forward to the investigation's findings. Nothing dramatic. Already done. Sent it to AP 5 minutes ago. You're terrifyingly efficient. It's why you pay me. Catherine smiled, and it was the first genuine smile Adrian had seen from her in days. Now go home. Be with your daughter. Let me handle the cleanup. Adrian drove home alone, Marcus following in a separate car to deal with the journalists camped outside. The neighborhood looked normal. Kids playing, someone mowing their lawn, the everyday rhythm of suburban life. But when he pulled into his driveway, Mia was sitting on the front steps with Mrs. Patterson, and the moment she saw him, she ran. Daddy! He caught her, lifting her up despite the fact that she was definitely getting too big for this. She wrapped her arms around his neck and held on tight. I saw you on TV again, she said into his shoulder. Mrs. Patterson said you were at an important meeting. I was. It went okay. Did you win? Adrian thought about that. Victor was gone from Meridian, but the investigation would take months. The lawsuits would drag on. The damage to reputations, both his and Victor's, wouldn't heal quickly. Nothing about this felt like a clean victory, but a man who'd hurt people for years was finally facing consequences. Women who'd been silenced were finally being heard, and his daughter was looking at him like he'd done something that mattered. Yeah, baby, I think we won. Over the next week, the story evolved in ways Adrian couldn't have predicted. The independent investigation at Meridian uncovered even more allegations. Former employees who'd been too scared to come forward initially, but felt safe now that Victor was gone. Financial irregularities that suggested he'd been using company funds to pay off previous complaints. A culture of fear that had permeated the entire organization. Victor tried to fight back. His lawyers filed motion after motion, gave interviews claiming he was being railroaded, threatened everyone involved with defamation suits. But without Meridian's resources backing him, without the shield of corporate power, his threats rang hollow. 3 weeks after the board meeting, the district attorney's office announced they were opening a criminal investigation into Victor's conduct. No charges yet, but the fact that they were looking meant Nora's evidence had been compelling enough to overcome the usual reluctance to prosecute powerful men. Dorothy's Diner got a surprising boost in business. People wanted to eat at the place where the viral video happened, wanted to see where this whole thing started. She hired 2 more servers and finally got the health inspector issues resolved. Turned out most of the violations were either exaggerated or outright fabricated. I'm thinking of putting up a plaque, Dorothy told Adrian when he stopped by with Mia one Saturday morning. Right at the booth where you were sitting. On this spot, a good man stood up. Something like that. Please don't. Too late. Already ordered it. She grinned, pouring coffee without asking. You did a good thing, honey. Let people celebrate that. The lawsuit settled out of court 6 weeks later. Victor agreed to pay Nora and the other women undisclosed amounts, rumored to be 7 figures each, in exchange for avoiding a public trial. He resigned from every board position he held, stepped away from all business activities, essentially disappeared from public life. Some people called it justice. Others called it a witch hunt. Adrian tried not to care about either assessment. What mattered was that Nora could sleep at night without fear, that the other women finally had acknowledgement of what they'd endured, that Mia's school stopped treating Adrian like a security risk and started treating him like the parent he'd always been. On a cold December morning, 2 months after everything started, Adrian and Mia returned to Maple Street Diner for breakfast. It had become their Saturday tradition again. The thing they'd been doing before one moment of standing up had changed everything. Nora was working the morning shift. She saw them come in and smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes. Your usual table? Please. She led them to the same booth where this had all begun. Someone had cleaned the crack in the vinyl, but you could still see it if you looked close enough. Some damage couldn't be erased, just patched over and lived with. Mia ordered waffles with blueberries. Adrian ordered coffee and eggs. Nora brought crayons without being asked. How are you doing? Adrian asked quietly, while Mia colored. Better. Dorothy's making me assistant manager, and I got accepted to a grad program, social work this time, not psychology. Figured I could use what I learned actually helping people instead of just documenting how they get hurt. That's great. Yeah. Nora paused. I've been wanting to ask you something. Why did you really stand up that night? I know you said it was the right thing, but there's more to it than that. Nobody risks everything just on principle. Adrian thought about his wife, about the cancer that took her, about the months of watching her fight a battle she couldn't win, about learning that sometimes doing everything right still wasn't enough to save someone. My wife died 3 years ago, he said finally, and at the end she made me promise something. She said, don't let Mia grow up thinking the world is just whatever happens to her. Teach her that she can change things. I didn't really know what that meant until that night at the diner, but when I saw Victor put his hands on you, I realized Mia was watching. And if I stayed seated, I'd be teaching her that we only stand up when it's convenient or safe. That's not the lesson I wanted her to learn. Nora's eyes were bright. Your wife sounds like she was smart. She was. Smarter than me most of the time. I think she'd be proud of you. I hope so. They ate breakfast in comfortable silence, broken occasionally by Mia's commentary on her artwork or requests for more syrup. The diner filled with the weekend crowd, families, elderly couples, the occasional solo person reading a newspaper. Normal life, continuing like it always did. When they finished, Adrian left a generous tip and helped Mia into her coat. As they headed for the door, Nora called out, Same time next week? Adrian smiled. Same time next week. Outside, the December air was sharp and cold, threatening snow. Mia grabbed his hand as they walked to the car. Daddy, can I ask you something? Always. That man from before, the mean one, is he ever coming back? No, baby, he's not coming back. Good. She thought about this for a moment. Did you make him go away? I helped, but a lot of people work together to make things right. Like a team? Exactly like a team. They drove home through streets decorated for Christmas, past houses with lights and inflatable snowmen and all the ordinary trappings of suburban December. Adrian's phone sat silent in the cup holder. No death threats, no journalists, no urgent calls from lawyers or security teams. Just quiet. At home, he made hot chocolate while Mia watched cartoons. Later, they'd build a blanket fort and read books and do all the weekend things they'd been doing since before the world knew his name. That evening, after Mia was asleep, Adrian sat in his living room with the lights off except for the glow from the street. He thought about the last 2 months, about everything that had happened since one moment in a diner changed the trajectory of his life. He'd lost business relationships, spent a fortune on legal fees, had his privacy destroyed and his reputation dissected by millions of strangers. His daughter's school had almost asked him to leave. His home address was public knowledge. The comfortable anonymity he'd built was gone forever. And he'd do it all again. Because some things mattered more than comfort or safety or the careful life he'd constructed. Some things demanded that you stand up even when the cost was high. His phone buzzed. A text from Nora. NH. Thank you for everything. I know I've said it before, but I needed to say it again. You changed my life, Adrian typed back. AV, you changed your own life. You did the hard work. I just showed up at the right moment. NH. Maybe that's all anyone can do. Show up when it matters. AV. Maybe. He set his phone down and looked out the window at his quiet street. Somewhere across town, Dorothy was probably closing the diner, counting the day's receipts, maybe looking at that ridiculous plaque she'd insisted on installing. Somewhere else, Victor Langley was living with the consequences of his choices, whatever that looked like. And here, in this modest house, in this unremarkable suburb, Adrian Vale was just a father trying to raise his daughter right, trying to teach her that power meant responsibility, that wealth meant obligation, that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing were the same thing. The viral video still existed, frozen in time at 38 million views. People still debated it, dissected it, used it to argue about everything from toxic masculinity to corporate accountability to whether random acts of courage actually mattered in a world that seemed designed to reward cruelty. But Adrian had stopped watching it. He'd been there. He knew what happened. And more importantly, he knew what happened after, the part the video didn't show. The investigation, the accountability, the slow grinding work of making things slightly better in a world that resisted improvement. That was the story that mattered. Not the 43 seconds of confrontation that went viral, but the weeks and months that followed. The unsexy work of documentation and legal filings and board meetings. The courage of women like Nora who fought back when the system told them to stay quiet. The small victories that added up to something bigger than any single moment. Adrian pulled out his laptop and opened a document he'd been working on. A foundation. Something focused on supporting people in service industry jobs who faced harassment but didn't have resources to fight back. Legal aid, documentation assistance, protection from retaliation. He'd been sketching out the structure for weeks, figuring out funding, talking to lawyers and activists about what was actually needed versus what sounded good. It wouldn't solve everything. Nothing would. But it might help. And helping was enough. Upstairs, Mia was probably dreaming about purple dinosaurs or talking vegetables or whatever 6-year-olds dreamed about when the world still felt manageable. She didn't know that her father had spent the last 2 months learning that the world wasn't manageable at all. It was chaotic and unfair and full of people like Victor Langley who thought power gave them permission. But she'd learned soon enough. And when she did, Adrian wanted her to remember that her father had stood up, that when it mattered, he'd chosen courage over comfort. That was the only legacy that actually counted. He closed his laptop and headed upstairs, checking on Mia one more time before going to bed. She was sprawled across her mattress, covers kicked off, elephant clutched in one hand. He pulled the blanket back over her, kissed her forehead, and stood there for a moment in the darkness. "Your mom would be proud," he whispered. "I hope I'm doing this right." No answer, of course, just the sound of his daughter breathing, peaceful and safe. That would have to be enough. In the morning, there would be new challenges. The foundation to build, the continued fallout from the lawsuits, the slow process of rebuilding a reputation that would never quite be the same. There would be people who still believed Victor's version of events, who thought Adrian was a bully hiding behind noble intentions. Let them think what they wanted. He knew the truth. Nora knew the truth. The women who'd finally been heard knew the truth. And somewhere in a diner across town, there was a plaque marking the spot where a tired father made a choice that changed everything. Not because he was special or brave or destined for heroism, just because he was there and someone needed help, and staying seated would have cost more than standing up. In the end, that's all any of this had ever been about. One person, one moment, one choice to do the right thing, even when it was hard. The rest was just details.